सोम्या मैम ज्वाइन कर चुकी हैं।
I cannot see her.
बट ज्वाइन कर चुकी हैं, मैंने देख लिया है मैम को। नीचे हम नीचे में नाम शो कर रहा होगा।
Kumar Narayan, please don't share
I
your screen.
I
It
have
is
removed
highly requested from the participants to please
I
don't
have
share it.
removed him. I have already removed him.
कुमार नारायण को एंट्री मत दीजिए अभी सेशन में।
Okay, divide.
Varun, I cannot see ma'am here. Please just call her and talk to her the problem she is facing in connecting to us. Might be due to the network problem or some other problem.
Dharan sir is connecting her.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, she is here.
I have received the PPT from ma'am. I am going to share my screen. I
Am I
request
audible
all the
now?
participants not to
Yeah, you are audible now.
share their screen.
Soumya, am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are audible.
So I have just emailed the presentation. Just give me. I'm really sorry. I don't know why this glitch has come
That's
up.
okay, ma'am. That's okay, ma'am. That's would be a technical issue, might be. So
I don't know
that's
why
okay.
it is happening. So I just emailed it to Mr. Dharin. If he can just open it up, and meanwhile just keep on telling him when to move forward.
Yeah, sure,
All
ma'am.
right, that will be great. So a very quick introduction of myself. Thank you very much, Soumya, uh, for that nice introduction. I'm Dr. Sakshi, and I'm a PhD from Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University, and I'm currently at the School of Management and Entrepreneurship at JNU. It's a wonderful opportunity for me also to be able to connect with all of you, because research is my very dear area, as you say, and I've been connected with research since a long time now. So let me just get to what we are going to do today. And am I clear, Soumya?
Yes, ma'am, you are clear.
Okay, okay. So let me just bring to you what I'm going to discuss about today. Of course, it's a more theoretical aspect of research. And when we talk about how we move forward with doing research, the very first things that come to our mind is the framing of a research question. Okay. So one very typical thing is that how we really frame research questions. So I'm sure you must have done this in some of your previous sessions as well, and how there you come across with some dilemma that you're facing, and there is some management problem, and then to solve that you come forward and say, okay, this is going to be my research question. So I'll not really focus into that aspect because my topic is specifically related to talking about research design. So we're going to broadly see what research design is. And yes, Dharin, can you just move a little ahead so that I can show what the presentation is going to be like? Yes. So okay, yes, so that's the first part of the entire research process, and you know that there are several stages in how these this research process is carried out, and we are typically going to talk about the third stage, that is designing of research. Okay, and typically speaking, if I say clarifying the research question, proposing a research question, that is all the preliminary work that you do with respect to finding journals, finding literature, and then postulating what eventually you want to do. So we are going to come to the third stage, and which is also known as the blueprint of your research, and is also a very, very crucial aspect of your entire research program. So can we move to the next slide? Okay, so let me just typically give you an example why this research design is done. So let's assumingly take an example that there is Miss Akansha, and who is the sales head of a company, and let's take an example of very contemporary times where there is a company she's handling, and they produce PPE masks. Okay, PPE kits and masks, and what the company has been doing so far is that they've been using the best of its material to make masks and to be used in PPE, and they've projected that the growth is somewhere going to be around 30%. However, they've noticed that in these times when their sales and their projections would have been higher, their sales have been declining. Now they want to know the possible reasons for it, why this is happening, and what are the possible reasons for it. So what they do is, and what Miss Akansha tries to do is that she decides that, okay, I'm going to study the buying behavior of the potential customers. So if we see here for the PPE masks and solutions and the test kits, who are going to be our potential customers? Our potential customers are going to be the doctors or maybe the pharma companies who are going to use it. So what they do is that they want to study, and they decide that we are going to study why our sales are declining. So can we move to the next slide? And what they do is that when they am I audible?
Yeah, ma'am, you are now audible. There were some fluctuations in your voice. Hello?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
And what they Yeah, so I've connected with my phone now. Maybe there was some issue with the laptop that was.
Yeah, ma'am. Now you were better clear with your voice, ma'am.
Yeah. So okay. So what she does is that she goes to speak to a CEO, and he says, "Okay, I am going to sponsor your survey, but I need a blueprint for what you're going to do." So she says, "Okay, blueprint for a short survey. What is that going to be like?" And she goes to a friend and she asks him, "Okay, can you really help me with some sort of designing of a research survey?" And then the first question that he asks her is that, "What design do you want?" Now she's a little confused because she's never heard that there are various or different kinds of designs for a research, and that's how she now wants to know about what this research design is, and that's how we are going to loosely going to focus on our topic now is from this aspect where how and what research design is. So let's broadly talk about what is the importance. Now, if you see most of the research papers that have been done in this area, and you'll find that there were studies which said that 20% of even the published work in the top most graded journals do not have a very good research design, and rest of the 80% fail to get published is because of the lack of this research design, or typically lack of this research design. So this is broadly very, very crucial for any firm or any person or any researcher who is doing this, that how you have to make your research design. So okay, so can we move ahead? Can we move to the next slide? Okay. So what typically research design is? So as I said, it's a blueprint of a detailed plan or how a research is going to be completed. And what you do here is that you operationalize all the variables that you have considered so far. So you have considered so many variables. You have seen you want to measure stress, you want to maybe measure IQ, and this is a blueprint of how you're going to measure it. So it's as typical to, or it's as analogous to a building plan. So if I say I have to make a building, so the first thing that I need is an architectural design of a building. And let's just assume that I'm going to make a building. I do not have a design of the building ready, and I'm being asked of how much cement is required, or how many bricks are required, or how much material is required. I don't know that material. What is the amount of acquisition there, because I do not have the plan ready. So this research design is going to give you a broad framework of how you're going to carry out your research. So it typically has three elements. One is it's going to convert all the questions that you have framed, all your research questions, into variables. And then it is also going to specify certain processes of measurements, and also tells you about the control mechanism. Can we move ahead to the next slide? So now from here we move on to how we classify research design. And this is the most crucial part of doing any research. Is you have to see where your research falls, whether it's a part of your exploratory research design, or a conclusive research design, or a descriptive or causal. So broadly, we say that there are two kinds of research design. One is where the research is inconclusive. You do research, but you cannot make inferences out of that research. And that doesn't mean that research is not important. it is definitely important, but you cannot make any judgments out of it. You cannot draw conclusions. You cannot typically make decisions. And the second kind is the conclusive research, which is the 80% part of all the research that is being done is what you call as the conclusive research. And here is your descriptive research and also your causal research. So we are going to take each one of them separately and discuss what exploratory research is and how we do that. The next slide. Okay, so coming to the first one, that is the exploratory research design. This kind of research design is very, it's the most important part of doing your research, is that, it's the preliminary part. Preliminary in the sense that sometimes you don't know what the problem at hand is, and you want to know more about the issue. In that case, you want to obtain more clarity what the issue is, what have been done about these issues in the past. So what you're trying to do is that you're not trying to draw any inferences. You're just trying to get more clarity on that issue, on that investigating factor. So that is what an exploratory research design is, and it's more qualitative in nature. So when I say you don't really apply too much of statistical techniques into these exploratory research designs. You just want to dig out more and more information about a particular fact or a theory and explore more and more factors that are affecting it, but the why component doesn't come here, the causal effect doesn't come here, the statistical designing doesn't come here. So it's a more qualitative part of your research. And here I would also like to mention one very pertinent factor, that this is an unstructured form of research. So here, but whatever research that you do is not structured. So even if you're going for an interview, your interview is not going to be very structured, or the data that you're going to collect is not going to be in the form of a survey data, and it's not going to be very, very structured questions and answers. So everything is going to be very unstructured. So therefore, it doesn't come under that conclusive kind of a research. So it's so here what you largely do is that you obtain background information. For instance, let me give you an example. So for instance, there is an old firm who wants to know that who has been into practice since last many years, and it has a lot of goodwill in the market. But now, since last 2-3 years, they see that there's a lot of dilution in the goodwill of that particular brand or that particular company. And what the people or the CEO or the board of directors of that company want to know is that why this is happening. So just that, they want to explore more why the goodwill loss is happening. So what they ask the research firm to do is that they will ask them to explore more of that area. Okay, so this is like a collection of more and more background information. So maybe they'll collect information about the company, who are the potential customers, what kind of demographic they have, all those things. Right, so that is the exploratory research design. So can we move ahead? Now we're going to discuss about how this exploratory research design is done. And one of the very, very common ways of doing an exploratory research design is through an expert opinion survey. Now, what do you mean by an expert opinion survey? Just as clear from the name, you'll pick up very experts in that particular area, and you just go to them and you ask them about the issue that you want to know. And and these experts could be maybe academicians, they could be people in that working in that particular area, or not only academicians, they could be just maybe highly unskilled people, but very, very expert in knowing a particular thing. Like for instance, there's an automobile company, and they want to go and target the rural area. Now, to go and target the rural area, what they will do is that they will go to vendors and they'll go to people who stay in that particular area and are very well versed with the customs and traditions and the feelings and habits of people living in that area. So in that case, these people become your expert opinionator. So they are going to give you opinions. So it's not necessary that it always has to be some academician or some person just excelling in that field. Then the second way is that you can do some secondary data analysis. Now, I'm sure you all are researchers and you know what secondary data analysis is. It's just simply means that you use a data which is not being collected, has not been collected for your particular purpose. So it has been collected for some other purpose. So let's say you see an annual report of a company, and you decide and you just see that what its CSR policies are. Uh, just so giving an annual report uh, uh, by a company is not it was not intended for your purpose. It was just given maybe to it was just a part of their mandatory guideline that they had to give an annual report. So that was given for some other purpose. However, you used it for your own purpose. So what you're doing in a secondary data analysis is that you're using some data, some information that is at some open portal or maybe even at some other portal that you have access to, but that information is not given for that particular purpose. So if I have to gain data on banking, or if I have to gain data on maybe company information, I have to get. So the companies just give out information quarterly because it's a part of their mandatory filings. So it's not necessary that that company has just given out that particular data just to fetch your needs. Okay. Then the third kind of an exploratory research design is a focus group discussion. So here, what you do is that it's a very unstructured kind of an interview where 6 to 10 people will sit together and they're just going to they're going to be given one topic, and on that they just spontaneously start discussing. So I'll just give you an example when it was done and how the results were fruitful. So long back, there was this company which made fruit juices, and one of the fruit juices was called as cranberry fruit juice, which tasted very nice, and it had a very good sales because it had a nice taste. But through the years, that they saw the marketing managers of this company saw that the sales of this particular cranberry juice had been declining. So they gave it up to a research firm, and they said that, and the research firm ultimately did a focus group interview to find out that despite having such a taste, such a lovely and such a popular taste, that fruit drink was still was not able to catch up to its sales level. And why was that happening? Now that largely was happening because there were some preconceived rumors about that particular drink, that cranberry treats some disease in males, and so the sales of that particular drink had been declining, and females would never go out to buy that particular drink. So that is, and what they did was that just by having a focus group in discussion. So in a focus group discussion, what they did was that they collected 6 to 10 people, they put them at a place, and they just said, okay, the cranberry juice by Tesco. And the people started discussing about it. Now that person who was the third observer was observing them from some other area, maybe through a CCTV camera, and just recording their discussions. And from their discussion, he just made out that this is the issue, and this has been the problem with these drinks. And then finally, they could chalk out a policy or a plan to finally to increase up the sales. Okay, so can we move ahead? Okay. All right. So the fourth part is the fourth method of an exploratory research is a depth interview. A depth interview is like, you just probe a very highly skilled interviewer, and you just go to him and you constantly just dig out information from that deep interview. Now, in a depth interview, the basic issue is that you really don't ask too many respondents. So there's just 1 or 2 respondents, and you dig them deeply. So deeply, you'll ask them questions. Make a particular drink, maybe whatever it is. If you just want to know about the research fact that you want to, that is your research area. So you just in depth try and analyze whatever information you've given you. And then comes the case analysis. Now, case analysis is by far one of the most important aspects of what you call as the exploratory research. And we as researchers always try to do case-based analysis, because why is it important is that it becomes a template for your future decisions or future policy actions. Let's say Netflix comes up with puts up a case where a person studies the policies of its HR personnel, or TCS, somebody writes a case on the compensation package of TCS. or maybe somebody just discusses the emotional quotient of Latin American people. Now, that is the case. Let's say there's a similar firm such as Netflix, and there's a similar firm such as TCS, and they want to change their compensation package. So what they get is they get a template that has already been studied, and they can just use that template to make further decisions. So that becomes a part of their policy action, and which of course is very, very crucial in exploratory research. So can we move ahead? Yes, Dhareen, can we move ahead? Okay. So as I said, we discussed about the exploratory research design, and now we're going to come to the more conclusive part of your research design, which is the descriptive research design. And why is it important is that it typically tells you about the nature, the characteristics of your data or phenomenon that you're trying to study. So it gives you a very comprehensive, a very detailed analysis of what your phenomena is, and it is going to give you certain metrics about your data, and you can just simply formulate your hypotheses, and you can formulate your inferences from it. For example, it gives you data in the form of percentages. Like for instance, 92% of the people say this, 92% of the females say this. So you know what is that percentage. And it can also give you characteristics on metrics such as mean, median, mode. So all these become a part of your descriptive research design. And as I said again, descriptive research design, of course, can be conclusive, but you generally don't do a descriptive research design solely, because you'll have to add up to some more bigger, more exhaustive research along with a descriptive research design. Can we move ahead? Okay. So under descriptive research design, a very, very important aspect is the cross-sectional research design. Now there are two things under descriptive research design. One, when you measure at one time period, and the second is when you measure across several time periods. So there are two things when you how you measure in a descriptive research design. So for example, let's say that let's take this example that I mentioned here about the Danish ice cream. And there was a Danish ice cream company who wanted to come to India and wanted to give out their very high-end dessert range series. But they wanted to know that whether people will be able to accept that high-end priced dessert or not. So they wanted to know the preferences of people towards ice creams or towards frozen desserts. So what they did was that they just, at one period of time, they took up 1,000 consumers from Indian metros, and then they asked them about their preferences. And out of their findings, they said that 92.6% of people preferred ice cream as their first dessert choice. Then they also found out that 64% of people eat ice cream outside once a week. Now, getting these metrics from the 1,000 consumer data that they analyzed is a part of your descriptive research process. And once you get this data, you can of course draw conclusions, and you can draw meaningful conclusions out of this, and you can infer out of it. So this is a cross-sectional design where you just take observations from number of entities, but only at one period of time. So this you always have to remember, that when we talk about a cross-sectional design, a cross-sectional just means number of entities or n number of entities or more than one entity, but at one period of time. So maybe if you are seeing the return on assets of 20 Indian banks for 2014, so it's one time period 2014, and you're seeing the return on assets for 20 banks. So the number of cross sections or the number of units are many, but the number of years is just one. Okay, so that is a cross sectional research design. Please move ahead. Then opposed to this, you have a longitudinal research design. Now, what a longitudinal research design is? Now, here what happens is that here the study involves that you study a representative group across the years. So maybe when you are studying one particular brand, across the years, how the return on assets of that particular bank has changed through the years. So that becomes a part of your longitudinal study. What you're actually doing is that you're repeatedly measuring that variable. Once you measured it in 2010, then you measured again in 2011, then again in 2012, 13, 14, 15, and that gives you a series of observations. And that series of observations is going to help you draw meaningful conclusions, or going to give you some basic statistics out of which you then can work further. Okay, so let's say if you want to see the volatility of stock market, so you're going to see it across the time period. If you want to see volatility of, say, let's say a particular bank, or even on the social sciences front, let's say if you want to assess uh, how the preferences of people have been towards maybe air conditioners through the years. You can measure it. You can take one particular person, then measure his habits or his preferences through the years. And then that is going to lead you to a longitudinal descriptive research design. Please move ahead. Okay, so if you see this slide very carefully, we mentioned about cross-sectional research design. Cross-sectional research design shows a sample surveyed only at T1, whereas a longitudinal design will show you a sample that's surveyed at T1, T2, T3. It can go up till n number of time periods. Okay, so this time can be till more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. Okay, so this I hope is very clear to you. Please move ahead. Okay, so you can just, I think, just try to answer this. So what is the effectiveness of a fertilizer on the produce of a crop? So if I want to know this at one particular period of time, I'm going to use a cross-sectional design. And how is the preference of consumers changed their opinion about the performance of AC from the last summers? In this case, because you're seeing through a time period, here you're going to use a longitudinal research or a longitudinal descriptive research design. Okay, and then we come to the most important and the final part of your research design, that is a causal or an experimental research design. Now, this is by far, as I said, the most important kind of research design, because this tells you why, this answers your why aspect of research, why a particular phenomenon is happening, or why is X or why is one particular variable causing Y. So that's actually studying the cause and effect relationship. And this cause and effect relationship is studied by a causal or also known as an experimental research design. And it is conducted, as I said, to identify the cause and effect relationship between two variables. So it will identify your Y factor in research. And let's say there's a sale. Let's take an example. So let's say there's a sales manager of a soft drink company, and he sends a sales executive for training. When they come back from the training, they find the sales manager finds that there is an increase in sales by 20%. So what he concludes is that the training has caused an increase in the sales of field sales executive. Now, is that really possible? Does it really mean that the increase of the sales has only been by the training that they have got? No, I'm afraid no. And what mistake that we all researchers do is that we tend to say that, okay, because there's a very direct correlation between the two, we say that one variable is causing the other variable. But in research, most of the time, there are several other factors which are known as extraneous factors or extraneous variables which come into play and which change the relationship or which also affect the relationship between X and Y. So please move ahead. There, I'm going to talk about that you have to understand this one very important aspect, that when I say X cause Y, it just does not mean that they are very, that, you know, if there are two variables who are very, very highly correlated, and you will say that X is causing Y. So let me give you an example. Let's say there's a fire in a building, and there are a lot of fire trucks that come up. So the fire goes on increasing, and the number of fire trucks also go on increasing. So can you really conclude that, and you find that, you know, there's a strong correlation between the degree of fire and the number of fire trucks that have come. So of course they're strongly correlated. जितनी ज़्यादा आग होगी उतने ज़्यादा number of fire trucks आएगी. And you say they're strongly correlated, and you also say that one variable is causing the other. That means the number of fire trucks is causing the fire, which is very adverse. So in that case, we have to understand that when we say that the two variables are highly correlated, this does not mean that one variable is causing other. There have to be various other factors that are causing that are causing one particular, that are causing a change in that particular variable. Now let me just give you a broad idea of what that variable is. So there's a dependent variable, that is a dependent factor, and there's an independent factor. So the independent factor is the one that causes the change in the dependent factor. Okay, please move ahead. Okay, so just try and answer this. That if I ask that X is the only cause of Y, can I say this? Can I really prove this in totality in research? No, I can never prove this in totality. I can just say that X is one of the possible causes of Y. So if Y is a dependent factor and X is an independent factor, so X is only one of the independent factors that is causing the change in the dependent factor. And is it possible to prove that X causes Y? Never. Never in research you can just say everything with 100% surety that that X is causing Y. At best, what we can do is we can just draw inferences. Yes, we can say that on the basis of data, on the basis of the sample that we have collected, we draw this inference. But we will never say this. We should never really use this term that this particular variable is causing Y. That's just your inference. That's just your inference that you have drawn from the research that you did. Okay. So please move ahead. Okay. So when I say that that there are these extraneous factors and X is causing Y, no, that means I have to control for these factors. So causal or experimental design hota kya hai, that it's a kind of a research design where the independent variables are manipulated, and they are manipulated in a very controlled environment to identify the relationship between one or two more than one variable. So here you're just trying to alter the relationship. You're just trying to see what are the other variables that are also affecting this particular relationship. So the causality just is not supposed to be taken in totality. You really have to see what are these other factors, and once you come to know about these other factors, you have to control them. You have to either block them or you have to really treat them. Now, when you treat them, that leads to what you call as an experimental design. So experimental design में आप बस वो variables को control करने की कोशिश करते हो जो X जो maybe Y को cause कर रहे हैं apart from X. हो सकता है sales increase हो रही हैं advertising की वजह से, but there might be other factors also which are increasing sales. There might be the decline in a competitor's price. There might be maybe a seasonal factor that's causing the increase in sales. So there might be so many other factors, but you're just accounting it to the increase in the advertisements or the number of advertisements. So that has to be taken care of. So you always say that you have to control for the other variables that are there in that causal diagram. Okay? So please move ahead, and we'll see that how you really have to take care of these controlling factors. So how you control for these extraneous factors is one is a repeated measure design. So it's like the most simplest form of an experimental design. And what you do here is that one group is formed that takes part in both the experimental condition and also in the control condition. Now, I'm sure you know what an experimental and a control condition is. An experimental condition will mean that आपको वो treatment दिया गया. Let's take an example and it will be moved here. So let's say if I have a hypothesis and if I assume that drinking coffee, that's my independent factor here, that is leading to an increase in heart rate, and that's a dependent factor. So heart rate किसकी वजह से increase हो रहा है through by drinking coffee, and that's my hypothesis that I've set. So what I do here is I make a group out of my entire population. I pick out a randomly selected sample. That randomization has to be there. So I randomly pick up a sample. I just give them coffee, give them coffee to drink, and then I measure their heart rate. Second time, I don't give them coffee, and I then measure their heart rate. So when I don't give them coffee is my control group. that's my group that's my control mechanism. And when I give them coffee, uh, that's my uh, that's my treatment mechanism. So that means I am putting one particular group through two tests, one through a control test and the other is through an experimental test or the treatment test. Now here what happens is that आपके पास controlling factors सारे control हो गए, शायद बहुत सारे और factors थे जो heart rate increase को cause कर रहे थे, but वो तो controlling factor, वो तो control group में भी आ जाएंगे. So here you can just see कि कितना variation आ रहा है, what is the amount of variation that is happening in your treatment group as opposed to your control group. Okay, so that's a repeated measure design. What is the biggest advantage of this repeated measure design is that you just take one group. It's less hassle. It has a less of hassle. You can just treat one particular group 2 times, so less. It's more cost effective also, and you don't have to really take 2 groups and then get into the hassle of trying and giving them control and the other treatments. Okay. So that is the first kind of experimental design and how you really control the extraneous factors, which is a repeated measure design. Please come to the second one. Okay, the second is an independent group design. So here the different participants are tested against each other, and here they and what you're trying to do here is that you measure, like for example, you have to measure the IQ, and you say that the IQ you have an hypothesis and you say that IQ is dependent on the amount of TV that is being watched. So what you do here is that you have 2 groups. One is a binge watcher who watch TV regularly, and then you have the other groups who are the avoiders. So here, वहाँ पे in the previous example क्या था आपके पास, that you just had one group. उन्हीं ग्रुप को आप कंट्रोल में भी डाल रहे थे, उसी ग्रुप को ट्रीटमेंट भी दे रहे थे, उनको आप कॉफी पिला रहे थे, उनको आप बिना कॉफी पिलाए भी दे रहे थे. But here what you're doing is you're taking 2 groups of the entire sample. One group is the one that watches a lot of TV. You measure their IQ. The second group is one that does not watch TV, who tries to avoid TV, and then you measure their IQ. So that is an independent group design, and then you do their p-test and ANOVA, and then how you draw conclusions and make inferences out of it. Okay. Come to the third one. And then finally, you have the matched pair design, or this is also known as a randomized blocking design. Very commonly you hear about this term and get really confused as to what this is. It simply means that here you just divide the groups out of your sample on the basis of one factor that you find is very prominent. So let's say in the very first example, you said that that drinking coffee causes an increase in heart rate. And I say that, but this difference is there between male and female. So मैं यहाँ पे क्या करूँगी? I will pick up a sample और मैं पहले ही segregate कर दूँगी. I will segregate male. I will segregate them from female. So I have 2 groups. One is my male group and the other is the female group. And then I give them treatments and controls and give them coffee. I don't give them coffee. Again, I give them coffee in the males one and I don't give them coffee in the females one. So then you can draw conclusions on the basis of whatever results you get. So here what is broadly happening is that you're trying to block the gender factor. क्योंकि आप बोल रहे थे that okay, there is an increase in heart rate by drinking coffee, but it is happening more in cases of males. So there was one gender factor that was extraneous and that was affecting, but you have controlled that gender factor. How? By making 2 groups in the very beginning. So you've taken one male group, one female group, and then you've given them those treatments and those controls separately. Okay, so this is broadly the experimental design. And Soumya, you can just tell me how much time is left, and then we can move to the model building. Otherwise, we may end here.
With the session. Ma'am, you can continue with the session. There is time.
Okay, so I'll just take 10 more minutes to discuss about
Sure.
the various kind of variables that we have. And, that is something that is very, very crucial in research. And most of us, most of the time, are just struggling with knowing what variables, what are the kind of variables that we encounter. So can we just move ahead to the next part? There, I'm going to talk about how a model is built. Okay, so you have quasi-experimental designs also, and that's broadly more of designs that are used in economics and finance. So here you use more of time series modeling and panel data models. Please move ahead. Okay, so here I'm going to talk about model building, and there are four broad kind of variables that I'm going to talk about. One is your independence factor, as we all know, and this is something that that's very synonymous with research. So we all know what an independent factor is, and we post about that we are very clear about how it is being modeled. And you have a independent and you have a dependent variable. This is the variable that is being affected, that is being caused. So when your heart rate was being increased, so that heart rate was your dependent factor, and the drinking of coffee was your independent factor. And you have intervening variables, moderating and controlling factors. So these are the three kind of variables that I'm going to quickly talk about. So I'll just take an example and then move ahead. So please come to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about how these relationships vary. So I have a hypothesis, and my hypothesis is that when I'm decreasing the number of working hours, number of working days from 5 to 4. That means when I have a 4-day long working week, as opposed to a 5-day long working week, that leads to a greater productivity. So that's my hypothesis, and if that's my hypothesis, I can clearly build I can clearly demarcate what my independent factor here is. So my independent factor is the 4-day working week, and my dependent factor is the increase in productivity, and that's very clear from this very statement. But there is one more factor that tries to alter the relationship between these two factors. So there is one factor which is known as the worker's age, or what is their age. So what happens in a moderating factor or a moderating variable is that जो भी आपका relationship है between your independent factor and your dependent factor, that relationship gets altered, or the strength of that relationship gets changed with a moderating factor or moderating variable. That means in this particular diagram, I can say that a 4-day working week leads to greater productivity in case of younger workers. So here the worker's age is my moderating factor. And how do I come to know about my moderating factors? Let's just take a very typical example. कि आपके घर में सबके घर में एक पंखा होता है, and you have a switch. So when you switch it on, the fan starts to rotate. The switch is analogous to your independent factor, which is not being governed by any other factor. And the rotating of the fan is analogous to your dependent factor. But there is a third thing that comes into play, which is the regulator. And that regulator, what it does is that it tries to change, or it tries to vary the degree or the strength of the association between the independent and dependent factor. And that is your moderating variable. So moderating variable क्या करेगा, वो बस आएगा बीच में, और तो बीच में इन दोनों के relationship को change कर देगा, उसका strength को change कर देगा. And that is the essence of your model building. So you have to really identify what these moderating variables are. You can have one moderating variables, you can have 2, 3, n number of moderating variables. And when you draw a model, and when you build a model, you really have to show them through these arrows like it's shown here. Okay, so I hope it's very clear what a moderating factor or moderating variable is. Let's come to the second part, that is an intervening factor. And most of us, till a lot of long time, even I used to get very confused at what broadly is the difference. हमारे पास एक moderating factor है, हमारे पास एक intervening factor है, तो दोनों के बीच में difference क्या है? As I said, you have a moderating factor. Can we go to back to that diagram? Yeah, this one. So let's say we have this relationship where we say that the strength, the number of working days in a week lead to greater productivity, and that is being altered by the worker's age, and that's being regulated by the age of the worker. But there is another variable that comes into play that is known as a job satisfaction, which says that no, the relationship between an independent factor and dependent factor is not direct. First, the independent factor is causing a job satisfaction, then the job satisfaction is causing a greater amount of productivity. So what this intervening factor is doing is that is just trying to manipulate the relationship between an independent factor and a dependent factor. तो उसको relationship को तोड़ता है और बीच में आता है और कहता है कि no, the independent variable is causing me, and then I cause the dependent factor. Okay, so that is an intervening factor. So let's move ahead and take some examples of what these independent factors are, and let's see if you can really make out from some statements what independent factors are. Please move ahead. Okay, so let's take this example where, okay, so in this particular example, it's very clear the introduction of a 4-day working week will lead to a higher productivity, especially among younger workers. So you have younger workers, that is your age, is a moderating factor, higher productivity is a dependent variable, and your 4-day working week is your independent variable. Then let's take another example. Let's say that the switch to commission from a salary compensation system will lead to increased sales per workers, especially for more experienced workers. Can you really hypothesize, or can you really not really hypothesize, but can you really tell me that what is the independent factor and what is the dependent factor here? Okay, so in this case, your independent factor will be, please move ahead, please move in the next slide. Okay, so the switch to commission from salary compensation system is an independent factor, and this leads to what? It is leading to greater sales. That is your independent factor. And especially in case of more experienced workers, so that means that's your moderating factor. That's altering the strength of the relationship between dependent and independent. Quickly come to the next slide. So let's take another example. A promotion campaign will lead to increased savings activity, especially when free prices are offered. The results come from enhancing motivation to save. So here they say that the motivation to save becomes your intervening variable. Please come to the last slide. You can just see what our independent factors are. So okay, so yeah, so your switch to compensation from salary compensation system is your independent factor. That is leading to increased sales, of course, is a dependent factor, and that especially for more experienced workers is a moderating factor. And this we've done. Please come to the last slide, second last slide. Yes, this one. Okay. So I hope you can really hypothesize what your intervening variable and your dependent variable and what your independent variable is. And when you make a research design, you really have to be very, very clear about what these variables are, and you really have to build them graphically as well as theoretically. So these model building is going to eventually help you to hypothesize relationship, and also will help you to build your hypothesis. All right, so let's end it here. Please come to the last slide. If you have any queries, you can reach to me at my email ID that's given here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this fruitful session. And now I request participants, if there is any doubt, please do cover in short period as soon as possible, and please don't carry forward with the long doubts.
Okay. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Shamli Dubey. You have very well explained and very systematically explained all the things. My question, I have two questions and both are interrelated to each other. Is it possible that your research is based on observation only? And what is undisguised observation method of research design?
Well, I'll tell you. See, but when we say observation, you have to be really very clear about what your observation is. Are you talking about some qualitative factor that you're trying to observe, or it is some quantitative factor?
Ma'am, it is totally based on qualitative.
Yes, so if you really read most of these researches that are being done these days, and not really researches that are being done these days, but there are specific journals that do talk about qualitative factors being assessed, and where they take up interviews with people, they take up depth interviews, and then they take their transcripts, and then they analyze and they do a content analysis, and then that's how they build on their observations. So here it would largely depend, Shamli, on the kind of research that you're doing and what your objective is and what your research question is. If it doesn't lead to some very depth analysis or in-depth analysis of what you're trying to do, then I'm afraid it might lead to some a little, not a very exhaustive kind of a research. And when you talk about an undisguised observation, see, when I said that you talk about when you uh, look at people in a focus group, so what you do to them is that you put them in a group and you don't watch them, so that
Yeah,
it becomes in a very natural setting that they answer it, that they take up their issues and they discuss. So there is one theory also in management that we study which says that when people are being observed, they try to behave in a very different manner, and their answer
yeah.
might also vary. So you have to, if you're taking an undisguised observation, I would really suggest that you do a survey or you do a questionnaire-based study, because that would really give you more systematic and structured answers.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank
Is there anyone else who want to ask question?
Yes, good afternoon, ma'am.
you. Yes.
Ma'am, I'm Sangeeta from Sharda University. My question is, अगर मेरा कोई वेरिएबल है, मेरा इंडिपेंडेंट जो वेरिएबल है, उसके 3 डिटर्मिनेंट्स हैं, और तीनों डिटर्मिनेंट्स के जो फैक्ट, मतलब तीनों डिटर्मिनेंट्स हैं कुछ मोर, जो तीनों डिटर्मिनेंट्स एक दूसरे पे डिपेंड करते हैं. Like knowledge depend on attitude depends on behavior. Means ये आपस में link up है. Behavior depend attitude depend on knowledge. और यही मेरे जो मेन है, जो मेरा इंडिपेंडेंट वेरिएबल है, उनके डिटर्मिनेंट्स हैं. तो जो ये मेरे 3 जो डिटर्मिनेंट्स हैं, ये मेरे क्या होंगे? मींस कैन आई टेक एज मीडिएटर्स?
Sangeeta, you can really email this to me, because I don't think it is very because you really have to see them from a larger perspective. Knowledge है, क्या ले रहे हो, क्या eventually आपका research question है, और आपका क्या model है. I can help you out with the model building, but for that you can just mail it to me at the ID that's given. Yeah. Okay? Or you can
Sure,
contact
ma'am.
me.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. I will mail you.
Any other? Thank you so much, ma'am, for this interaction.
Thank you, Soumya.
Participants has really learned about the research design of
Thank you,
research
thank you so
design,
much.
and they will practice in their thesis and their papers later. Now
Sure.
I request Vinita Kumari ma'am to present the vote of thanks to Sakshi Sarma ma'am.
Thank you, Soumya.
Yeah.
Good evening, Sakshi ma'am,
Thank
and
you.
all the
Good evening.
participants present over here. I, Vinita Kumari, on the behalf of PG Department of Commerce, Magadha University, and Indian Accounting Association, Patna branch, would like to thank you, especially to you, ma'am, for
Thank you.
your clear and detailed explanation about research processes. Ma'am, you beautifully explained each and every steps of research process to us.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sure lots of problems, confusions of our participants have been cleared today. Ma'am, you have given a detailed and clear explanation about exploratory research design, types of research designs, causal experimental research design, independent group designs, randomized blocking design, and many things that is related with research design, with clear and with clarity and lots of examples.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am,
Thank
and
you.
hope to get your assistance with your knowledge and information in future also. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
ma'am.
much. Thank you. It was
And
lovely
also you
connecting with all.
and you also explained, answered all the questions, queries that arise today from our participants. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank and appreciate to our participants that they are maintaining the dignity of class patiently and are very energetic. So, and you, Soumya, thank you so much for your coordination today. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we would be winding up this session, and we would be again meeting tomorrow at the described time in the schedule. So please join on time. It is requested from every participant to join on time. Thank you so much, everyone.